When a group of women get together, the topic of their partner often comes up, and often one of them will have a big sigh and say how hard it is to get them to do stuff, especially around the house. And often women or wives will resort to yelling at their partner to get their way. But actually, if you understand how a man's brain works, you might not need to yell all of the time. Yes, agreed. You might need to yell some of the time. You might still get angry some of the time. But if you use these tricks, it will definitely reduce the amount of time you're shouting. So in today's session, today's weekly wisdom, we're going to look at alternatives to yelling. But first, let me know in the chat, what are the reasons why you end up yelling or shouting at your partner? So let me know in the chat. And while you're writing, I'll just quickly go through. These are some of the topics that we're going to discuss today. Why yelling ruins relationships. And what are your beliefs which resort to you yelling in the first place? And then we're going to look at what can you do instead. So as I've spoken in the past, every relationship has two cups. And today we're going to be focusing on how to not pour into the negative cup. I've spoken in previous sessions about how to pour into the positive cup, so I'm not going to cover that today. And specifically, we're going to look at today from the female's perspective, how she can avoid pouring into his negative cup. Again, just the previous session, we spoke about the 3 critical mistakes that men need to avoid. So that's from the men's side. So today we're going to be addressing from the ladies' side. Now, how does yelling ruin the relationship? So these are different things that if the female partner does, can often lead to filling up of the man's negative cup. So when she criticizes him, because he wants to feel like he's her hero. When she minimizes him, men often want significance. They want to feel good. So when she downplays something that he's done, minimize what he's done, that will lead to filling in the negative cup. Yelling, controlling him, abusing him. There's the famous case of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. It was televised, publicized. So I was following that, and you could see there was so much evidence of her being abusive towards Johnny Depp, both verbally and physically. So of course, that's what led to the demise of the relationship. So when the cup is full, then he's going to start resenting his partner, and before you know it, you'll end up losing him. Like, even if he doesn't leave the relationship, it's like you end up being like 2 roommates in the house, and you'll lose that loving connection. Now, I'm going to speak about things or tricks that you can do instead. But if you've been hurt already, and if your emotional cup is already full of resentment and anger and hurt against your partner, it's going to be very hard for you to follow up and practice anything that I'm going to speak about today. So the first thing I'll say is you need to go through a process of forgiveness and understanding first to release those emotions, to release all that negativity in the cup first. If there's no window of tolerance, it's very difficult to follow what I'm about to talk about. So if you need help with that, I'll explain some options at the end of this session. And as part of that, what I'll also say is, just as I said last session to the men about them taking responsibility, what I'll say here is as well, you need to take responsibility. So what happens to you is not your fault, but the healing is your responsibility. So in other words, yes, there were things that were poured into the negative cup. The healing of that is your responsibility to put that down. Now, let's look at the first of the beliefs. So one of the first things that women always say to me is, the wives will say to me is, why should I have to ask him? No, he should know already. And then sometimes they even give him a big hint. And then they're like, now he should get it. So you may have heard this point. from your partner, most likely, hey, we're not mind readers. So this is a classic thing that you'll hear in practically every couple, and where the man eventually says, "I'm not a mind reader." And just to be clear, ladies, subtle hints don't work. Obvious hints don't work. One client was telling me that she hates the restaurant her husband takes her to on Valentine's Day. So I said, the obvious things, why don't you just tell him? She said, I did tell him. I was like, okay, what did you say to him? She said, oh, there's another restaurant across the way which has some really interesting dishes. Do you want to go there? And he said, nah, let's not risk it. So I was like, you didn't actually tell him that you didn't want to be at that restaurant. It's just like, I gave him a hint. So no, ladies, hints don't work. What you have to do is, trick number one, you need to tell us directly. Just ask him directly. Ask exactly what it is that you want. By the way, what I'm saying here, although I'm talking about it from a relationship perspective, boyfriend, girlfriend, fiance, husband, wife, this also can be related to a sister, brother, for example, the male, female, even a father-daughter relationship. So just be aware of that. Although I'm talking about relationship, I'm going to use the example of relationships. It can be expanded to other relationships. So, yes, going back to what you need to do is you need to ask him directly. See, men are very goal-focused, generally, one-track minded, and to some degree, because they're kind of so focused on their goal, they can often be self-absorbed. So they don't always pick up on subtle signals. So before you get disappointed, just ask him. Now, I know you might say, well, if I ask him, there's a possibility he won't do it. Agreed. But if you don't ask him, it's almost guaranteed he won't do it. So which one do you want? Obviously, it's better to ask. At least there is still the possibility. So ask him directly. Now, if you ask him directly and he says no, then you might need to ask him again. And again, I get this from the female clients. It's like, why? Why do I need to ask him? It was hard enough asking him the first time. Yes, you might need to ask him again. And it's most likely because he doesn't want to do it. It's as simple as that. So you've asked him and he said, no, I'm not doing it. So you might need to ask him again. And you might need to ask him again until he agrees. And he will agree. He generally, not that he will agree, he may agree because it pleases you. When he sees how much you're asking, when he sees how much you're asking him, and he knows it's going to please you, therefore he may actually do it. So in the process of this, I often get asked, well, why can't he just do it first time I ask him? And then the belief may come up that he doesn't love me. The reason, I asked him to do it, he should just do it then because it pleases me. It's something that I want done. So if he doesn't do it, it means he doesn't love you. No, it doesn't mean that. It just means, again, he doesn't want to do it. But when you keep asking him nicely, that gives him time to be able to shift his thinking. See, because he's so one-track minded, and because he's so, shall we say, determined on his goals, sometimes he's not always able to make that shift. Sometimes he's not always able to, he's just going on this track, and now you're going to ask him to do something that he doesn't want to do, or it's going to disrupt whatever he's doing, and now he has to get off this track. He's very monotrack minded. So sometimes it takes a while for his brain to stop and kind of say, okay, you know what, we need to shift off this track, we need to do what she wants to do. And then when so yes, he doesn't want to do it, and then when he does do it, so you got to keep asking him again, and finally when he does do it, you want to give him a reward. So for example, John Gray, he's the person who wrote the book Men Come From Mars, Women Come From Venus. He tells this story of him and his wife, and his wife wanted him to take her to the opera. So the opera, I'm sure you all know what the opera is like. You know, they're all singing, and sometimes it's in a different language, and it's like 3 hours long. And he didn't want to go. And it's this whole, dressing up in a tuxedo and all that kind of stuff, all that jazz. So when she asked him, he said no. It's like, no way am I going to the opera. And then she came to him and said, John, please take me to the opera. He was like, no. And she came to him another day, John, please, pretty please take me to the opera. So he agreed, and he took her to the opera. He got dressed up, even though he didn't want to. He sat through this 3 hour, or however long it was, this opera show, and then they came back home. And then as soon as the garage door shut, let me just say this, she rewarded him. Now leave it to your imagination what that reward was. Now here's the interesting thing. The next morning, he explains this, the next morning he woke up, after he got his reward, he woke up and he was kind of pacing the room. Then he picked up the phone and he dialed and then he said, oh, hello, how much are 2 season tickets to the opera? So from going from not wanting to go to the opera, he then was actually even inquiring about season tickets to the opera. So you can see, I'm just starting to give you a hint as to how powerful a woman can be. So giving him a reward is very powerful. You can see there, like it totally changed his opinion or his view, perspective of going to the opera. So when I often tell this point, give him a reward, the natural response is, are you serious? Like, first of all, I had to ask him in the first place. Then I had to ask him again and again. And then finally, after he's actually done it, you're saying I have to give him a reward? So hear me out. I do understand. It's like, yeah, so why do you have to ask in the first place? Then why do you have to ask again? And then on top of that, you want me to give him a reward. So the underlying belief here is that men are not, the underlying belief I have to address is men are like women. Men are not like women. They don't think like you. Their brains are wired differently. Now, so I'm going to explain in a little while. I'm just going to explain now how men's brains work. But you've got to understand that you need to work with his brain. Now, why is his brain wired like that? That's a problem you need to bring up with God, because or the universe, whatever it is you believe, because our brains are wired like that. So there's not much we can do about it. Men are not women. Just like I was discussing in the previous session when I was talking about, so men always complain about women, like, why are they so emotional? And I was making the point, like, that's how their brains are wired, and we have to accept that. So similarly, women, you have to accept our brains are wired differently, and you have to work with that. So it helps to understand a man's brain. It's very goal focused. Wants to get this, whatever this thing is, to achieve it. And in the process of achieving that goal, it's often very monotasked focus, like is monotasking. He just wants to sit on that single track. His brain just wants to work on that single track. It doesn't want to be moved off that track. He wants to finish that. I have this problem sometimes where I'm really focused on whatever it is that I'm doing, say on the laptop, and then I've run out of water. It's not at my desk. So it means I have to actually go downstairs and get some water. And my brain's just like, no, finish this task. And like 1 hour can go by, 2 hours can go by. And I'm like, I'm really thirsty. I need to drink some water. So it's just how our brains are. And this allows us to be super focused on that one thing in order to achieve it. One author, one kind of person who's done a lot of research on this is a person called Alan Pease. So he's researched and written a book actually called Why Men Don't Listen. And he was explaining in this book that there are very few female brain surgeons. So I think it was Harvard University that tried to address this by encouraging more women to join. And so women, females were joining the course, but they were not able to complete the course. They were dropping out, and it was still very male dominated profession. And one of the reasons why is because men are very good at being uber focused, because that's how the brain is, just single tracked. And to be a brain surgeon, you have to be like that. You can't have any distraction. One slight, I guess, I'm not a brain surgeon, I'm just guessing, like one kind of slip of the knife, shall we say, in big trouble. And the other thing that you need to understand about a man's wiring is he's very much a dopamine seeker, which explains about the reward aspect. So men very much after a dopamine rush. That's one of the reasons why he loves going watching sports, watching his football team, and then when they score, it's like, whoa, got absolutely crazy. It's such a huge dopamine rush. Whether it's at work doing a presentation for a customer and the boss comes in and it's like, oh yeah, well done team, we got the deal. Whether it's playing a video game and then you get to the big boss at the end of the level, and then finally you kill that big boss and it's like, level 2 unlocked, and it's like, woohoo! It's such a dopamine high. So we thrive off dopamine. Then you come along and tell us, I don't know, something like, I have to take the bins out. Sunday night, take the bins out. The bin men are coming the next morning. So a lot of times there isn't a dopamine hit from that. So it helps. Rather than, I mean, you could yell, you could do all sorts of things, doesn't take it out, and you can end up yelling. Or you could use the trick, rather than yelling, is to give us a motivation to do it. So even if it's you, like, I don't think women realize the power that they have over men. You actually have a superpower over men. You just don't use those tools enough, shall we say. So even just a smile, even a wink, like, oh, please, like John Gray's wife, she was like, oh, please, please, like she really went into that feminine. Of course he loves her, and knowing that this is going to make her feel happy, loved, etc., and the way that she did it, he agreed to do it. So I'm going to make this point here. Now I'm a guy, I'm a man myself. But I'm just saying this to the ladies, just to help you understand our wiring, just to help you get over men aren't like women necessarily, like in that regard at least. It's almost like we're like dogs. Now, I'm not saying we are dogs, but the brain is like a dog in terms of the dopamine, in terms of the rewards. Like, it's like you tell the dog to sit, and then it sits and you give it a reward, you give it a treat, and it's like, oh my God, I want to do that again. So the brain is like, the man's wiring of a brain is like that. When he gets that, when you tell him to do something and you give him a reward for doing it, even if it's just as simple as giving a peck on the cheek, or just saying thank you, or great job, or something like that, that's what gives the dopamine. I actually have one client who has ADHD, like quite high on the spectrum of ADHD, and he was making this point to me that if his wife would just say to, like, he can't do things without dopamine. Like, he tries, it's just his brain will not go past that. She'll tell him, she'll yell at him, whatever, so many things she'll try, and he just can't get past that. And he's like, if she would just give me some dopamine, my brain would just go after it like a dog with a bone. So, okay, not everybody has ADHD to that extreme, but the principle is true of men in general. And when I spoke to the wife, like, why don't you do it? She's like, oh, I don't want to feed his ego when I do it like this. And she gave so many reasons. And so I need to go back to her and have a proper conversation. This was before we knew he had ADHD, so I'm going to go back to her and have a conversation with her now and discuss this point that actually doing that will help you so much in your marriage and help you get so much more done. It's like, use your superpower, use the fact that, giving him even a little bit of a reward gets him motivated, gets him to do so many things. Use it. Why not? Because otherwise you're yelling and it's just more hard work for you. So I guess at the end of the day, it's your choice, whether you want to yell or whether you want to use this reward system and dopamine system. So I just want to make a point here. So I'm not using any of these things as an excuse. I'm just saying that if you know how a man's brain works, use it to your advantage. Now, another thing that will come up is, I've told him to do something and it's like he's got selective hearing. It's like, so you'll tell him something important, but then it seems like he didn't listen. It's like it doesn't listen to me. So let's take responsibility where we need to. So you might say this to a man. Maybe you're going out to your mum's or something, and you might say, I'll make sure you empty the rest of the bins around the house and put the clothes in the dryer before you go to sleep. I'm just going off to my mum's. Just make sure you do these things. And what he hears is, so it's the words that I've underlined, make sure you rest and sleep. So yes, sometimes, let's confess let's put our hands up, take responsibility where we need to. Yeah, sometimes men do have selective hearing and they only hear what they want to hear. Agreed. However, there is a responsibility that I want to give to the ladies about this. So going back to the point, men are very good at monotasking. Women in general, you are good at multitasking in general. Obviously, some people are, some even females are very good at monotasking, and they find it very difficult to multitask. Obviously, there's variety. Wear the shoe if it fits. But in general, women are much better at multitasking, and the reason for that is the connection between the brains is bigger, so they're more able to process things simultaneously. It's like having a what's it called, like a multi-core chip rather than a mono chip. So, for example, a woman can be ironing, she can be watching a TV series, and maybe even talking on the phone or talking to somebody in the room, all simultaneously, like that. And so because women, you can do that, naturally you think a man can do that as well. So you come up to him when he's maybe looking at his phone, and then you'll say something to him which is really important. Something like, listen, I'm just going out to the shops for a couple of hours. Now, I've put the clothes out. If it rains, can you take the clothes off the washing line? Because I need my work clothes to be dry for tomorrow morning. So what does he say? While looking at the phone, he says, okay, honey. So he didn't take his eye off the phone. He didn't look at you. He was still, doing whatever he's doing. And he says the words, okay, honey. So you think he's listening. So you think he's listening. Now, was he listening? Because men find it very difficult to multitask, what actually happened there was his brain is focused on trying to keep him doing whatever task he's doing. Maybe he's writing an email, writing a message to somebody, and it's a really important message. Now you've just given him a really important task, and his brain will automatically say, okay, honey, just to stop. It's almost like a protective mechanism to make you go away so that he can just carry on doing whatever it is he's doing. But the problem is, it didn't go in. And it might be he's writing that message, and let's say half an hour later, it starts raining. Now, somewhere deep down, there's an uneasy feeling because it started raining. but he doesn't know why. And then he carries on with his messaging. And then guess what happens? You come back after 2 hours, and the first thing you say to him is, at first you see him just sitting in the same position. Then you're like, alarm bells go off like, did you take the clothes off the washing line? Because I need it for work tomorrow. And he's like, no. And of course, we know what happens then. And back and forth. And he's adamant that you didn't say anything to him. He's absolutely adamant. No, you didn't say that. And he has zero recollection of what you said to him. And you were like, you said okay, honey. So, what you have to do is, you have to get his full attention first. Because he's not going to hear a word. He's totally monotasking. So get his full attention. You can see in this picture here, for example, she's got right up to him, nice big smile, and so although he's eating and he's on his phone, he now looks at her directly. You've got his full attention. Okay, and then it's at that point you can then tell him whatever that thing is that you need to tell him, and then you can even put in something like, and if it rains and you don't take the clothes off, then I'm going to have to go in to work with soaking wet clothes. And, we don't want to give other men ideas, do we now? So that's immediately, quite strongly, gone into his brain. So now you go off and as soon as it starts raining, his brain goes, like alert goes off, right, go get the clothes. Because I'm not having my wife go to work with soaking wet clothes. Of course, you wouldn't do that in the first place, but it's just the imagery that you create. So that's working with his brain. It's a much better way of working. So, in conclusion, in summary, right, you need to ask him directly what it is you want. Sometimes, when he doesn't want to do it, you might need to ask him again. And give him a reward after he does it. Work with his dopamine brain. And when you're giving him very important instructions, make sure you get his full attention first. So full attention means actually, in one sense, having his eyes there. Make sure he's actually looking at you when doing this. Okay. So as I was saying, if you are struggling with the resentments and the anger and the negative emotional cup is very full, then what I'll suggest is go on to www.nijdey.com/events, and there are some events coming up to do with forgiveness. I also have some forgiveness, an online course which you can do, and there's also some sound bath healing, things like that, some events that we're running. So please join us for that. Or you can contact me directly and we can have one-to-one sessions where we go through that. It's very important to let go of that. Like I said, everything that we've spoken about today, if your emotional cup is full, whether it's with your father, brother, husband, or partner, like that, if your emotional cup is full, it makes a relationship very difficult. It's very difficult to do some of these things. And then the last thing is I have this online course called Heartbreak to Heartfelt. So if you have been through relationship trauma and it's been very difficult, shall we say, to connect with yourself, this course helps you to re-establish the relationship with yourself and strengthen that, because the relationship with yourself actually forms the foundation of all other relationships. I always make this point that the relationships you have around you are a reflection of the relationship with yourself. So I always like to start with that course, even before we talk about relationships, as in male-female psychology and relationships outside, externally. It's the most important relationship is the relationship with yourself. So always start with that first. Okay, so I will pause there. Are there any questions? And just to apologize, I know some of you joined on a different stream. But let me just check, are there any questions? So just reading through some of the comments. When he fails to understand, okay. Disrespect again and again, them doing something they know I don't like again and again without any regard to my feelings. Okay. Sometimes it doesn't work. Yes. So in some relationships, what I found is that the husband or whoever it is, whichever partner it is, obviously we're talking about the female here. So the female doing all these things, and then all these things may not work. So that we need to explore deeper as to why his motivation is not there. Now, these things will work generally when a person does love and does want to engage in the relationship. Now, if a person is avoidant, or in one sense you could say his heart was never in the relationship in the first place, then that's a different situation. We need to look at that in a completely different way. This is, in one sense, kind of general principles where the two people do want to be in a relationship and want to work things out. It could even be that maybe his negative cup is now too full for whatever reason. So again, we would need to address his negative cup first, even before if you're doing all these things and it's not working. We often need to look at his negative cup and see maybe his negative cup is too full, or what's the reason behind it, and then understand. So thank you for your great explanation. Good job. Thank you. You know my love language is appreciation, so I always appreciate appreciation. Thank you. And please, if you enjoyed this session today, please share this video with others, like, subscribe, and leave any comments what you took away from today's session, what you have learned. And again, if there are any questions or even any challenges to what we've discussed today, please write them in the comments, and I love looking at them, and it gives me shall we say, more material to then choose what topics to do next, and can help you through those challenges and difficulties. And in the next session, we are planning to do what to do after a breakup, how to, shall we say, give up attachment to the person that you were in a relationship with, and often finding it very difficult to give up attachment. This is one of the things that one of my main clients that come to me, often very deep attachment to whoever it is that I had to break up with, and it's like the brain just can't function properly. So how do we deal with that? It's a very difficult situation. Maybe you've experienced that in the past, and people think that time is the greatest healer. And I always make this point that time alone doesn't do the healing. You have to actively work on it, especially if it's a deep attachment, deep emotions. It's almost like we lose a part of ourselves in that process. So it's important to do the healing properly. And obviously the reason why I say this is because I've been through this myself. I've been through many heartaches, breakups, and it never healed by itself. Only when I went through therapy, only when I went through the processing the emotions properly did I actually heal. So I'll be talking about that next week, next session. So I look forward to seeing you then. Okay, take care everyone. We'll see you in the next one.